I'm very privileged to be introducing Myron on behalf of Adhyayan. Adhyayan, as you know, has 400 partner schools and has worked with over 7,000 government schools. In recent times, they've trained over 1,300 educators through introductory webinars on virtual classrooms and even held intensive Tech for Teachers courses. So they've really responded to this crisis very, very proactively. Over 100 leaders have been trained through their framework on readiness for online teaching and learning. We're happy that many non-partner schools today are also engaging with us. And we hope that in the future you will become Adhyayan partners. Adhyayan can be followed on social media platforms. They're on Twitter, Facebook, and you can get to know, and they have a WhatsApp group as well, and you can get to know about all their upcoming programs through these. This particular professional community of practice is an initiative that has begun with over 100 school leaders as a way to continue learning and collaboration between us. Through 2 Saturdays a month, we collectively discuss issues, concerns, and invite speakers and experts like Myron as a way to update and upgrade ourselves. This webinar has been conceptualized in partnership with ASCD. For those of you, ASCD is an international organization that empowers educators to achieve excellence in learning, teaching, and leading so that every child is healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged. With 113 with over a lakh member stakeholders from more than 129 countries, the ASCD community also includes 71 affiliate organizations, and India ASCD is one of the latest, and we're really proud that Adhyayan has partnered with them. It is my pleasure to introduce you all to our speaker for today, Mr. Myron Dueck. He's based in Summerland in British Columbia, Canada. He lives with his wife and 2 children and is the vice principal for assessment and innovation in his local school district. He's the author of 2 books, both published by ASCD, Grading Smarter, Not Harder, and Giving Students a Say, which is about smarter assessment practices to empower and engage. Over the past 23 years, Myron has gained teaching and administrative experience in both Canada and New Zealand across the continuum. Myron has developed a number of grading, assessment, and reporting systems with his classes in which students have greater opportunity to show what they understand, adapt to the feedback they receive, and play a significant role in the reporting of that learning. Myron has been a part of administrative teams, district groups, school committees, and governmental bodies that have further broadened his access to innovative ideas. Myron has shared his stories, tools, and firsthand experiences with public, charter, and international school educators around the world. And recently, his presentations have diverged to include global education trends and broader socioeconomic realities that impact learning. We are very fortunate to have Myron here today to share information and tools on innovative instructional, grading, and assessment practices that can be adapted to the current remote learning situation that we have all been thrust into completely unprepared. Through his talk, Myron will challenge some of the beliefs many of us hold on to about assessment and encourage us to think differently. And I think I've said enough. I will give the stage to Myron. Thank you, Myron.
Thank you, Nita, and trust that people can hear me just fine. Thank you so much for the introduction. You could just keep going. You have a wonderful voice and a great introduction. So hello from British Columbia, Canada. Welcome to the session. Perhaps I just remind people to turn their microphones off unless they have something to share. Sometimes it makes it a little bit easier. I'm I'm coming to you from British Columbia, and yet we have ways of connecting, and one of those is on Twitter. I certainly welcome a Twitter back channel. There are some of the hashtags and the Twitter handles that you could use if you wish. I will not be monitoring the Twitter feed as this is going because I'm devoting my attention here. But I know that I use Twitter when I'm at conferences and listening to webinars and so on. So I certainly welcome people to do so. So I am coming to you from Summerland. Summerland is right about there, and we are a little ways away from each other. My daughter said I could do a screen capture video, but I did this old school. I will just give this globe a little spin here. So as best as I can tell, we are pretty much on the opposite sides of the planet. If I was to visit New Delhi, I believe it is right about there. And according to Google, if you were to go a straight line from Summerland, British Columbia to New Delhi, you would travel just over 11,000 kilometers. And that is certainly a stretch. But it is nice in this era that I wish my grandfather could live to have seen this, that somehow through screens on opposite sides of the world, we are connecting about education. I think he would have been absolutely captivated. Speaking of Summerland, I want to extend a welcome to you. When we are able to travel again, I don't know if anybody has been to British Columbia. You're more than welcome to chime in on the chat room if you have, or if you've been to the Okanagan Valley, but that is where I live. And it is a wonderful area of vineyards, freshwater lakes. If you are thinking about visiting somewhere in Canada, the Okanagan Valley is a good choice. And I personally welcome you. I live here, as Nita said, with my family. That is Tracy, Elijah, Sloan, and Ryder, the dog. I'm very involved in my children's lives, at least to the amount they allow. This is, I coach my son's volleyball team. He is going into grade 11. My daughter doesn't let me coach her dance, but I am allowed to take some pictures from time to time. So this is my daughter, Sloan, and she is involved in dance. So Nita said in the introduction that I have been in education for quite some time, and that's true. I've been a classroom teacher now for 21 years in the classroom. And more recently, I have been filling the role of working with assessment and innovation in my school district. This has allowed me access and broadened my awareness of what many teachers are up to. And I'm going to share some of that today. So back in 2006, I want to try to tell you why I'm here this morning. For you the evening. My principal came into my classroom and he said, "Hey, Myron, do you want to go to a grading conference?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want to go to a grading conference. I am coaching volleyball teams. I am very busy." He said, "No, it would be good to talk about grading." I said, "Bill, I can't think of a worse topic to discuss. It would be incredibly boring. So no, I don't want to go." He says, "Well, that's too bad. I have basketball tickets for an NBA game there." Okay, I've wanted to go to a grading conference for quite some time now. That would be fun. So I go to this grading conference and this man comes to the microphone. His name is Rick Stiggins. Some of you may have read Rick's work. And Rick is talking, and I'm going to admit something right now, and maybe some of you will turn your computer off at this point, but I was looking up furniture on IKEA. I didn't want to be there, and I didn't think I had anything to learn from him. And I realized this is rude, but I was at the very back of the room, and I'm going, that's a nice armoire. It's white, that would fit in our kitchen. And he says, "I wonder if you could answer 3 questions in your classroom." He says, "I wonder if you could answer, where are we going with our learning?" And I thought, no, I don't know what you mean. And then would your students, if they knew where they were going, would they be able to answer, here's where I am now? I I give them their scores back, I thought to myself. And he said, and if they knew where they were going, and then they realized they hadn't got there, would they be able to close that gap? Huh. Well, speaking of closing, I closed my laptop. And I began to listen to Rick. I thought, I don't think I could answer those questions. And I put my laptop away, and I spent the next year after that conference working on this. And I'm going to share an example of this later in the session. How would we share the learning targets with our students in a meaningful way? I had never done that. So I got back, and the next year at the conference, I presented what I had tried in my classroom. I was a high school teacher coming back to present. And a man comes up to me from Port Alberni Secondary, and he says, would you like to speak to my staff about this? Could you come to our school? I said, I'm just a history teacher. I'm just trying something in my classroom. And then I got an email from the University of Kentucky. And they said, we understand you are an international speaker on the topic of unit plans. Would you like to come to the University of Kentucky? And I started laughing. I showed my principal. I said, they think I'm an international speaker on the topic of unit plans. And my principal says to me, where were you speaking? The United States. Yes, you're Canadian. He goes, what were you speaking about? Unit plans. Myron, it looks like you are an international speaker on the topic of unit plans. And that is how it actually occurs. Okay. So then it went like this. Okay. And I have had the great pleasure of speaking to many groups from many places on the topic of education. And I want to share with everybody that the challenges are similar everywhere you go. And it doesn't matter if you are in a tiny town or a large city. And it was these experiences that I have written about and done some projects on. And Nita, thank you for mentioning my next book, Giving Students a Say. It will be likely released by ASCD in January. So if people are looking to buy it, it's not for sale just yet. So my daughter and I were in Ecuador on March 17th of 2020. And that's when my wife called and said, have you heard how bad this coronavirus is getting? And I said, no, we've been traveling, and you're going to come join us in Ecuador. She says, no, we won't. You need to get on a plane and come home. And the very next day, we were back in British Columbia riding our mountain bikes, and we had got my daughter a bike, and my son had been building some trails, and we began to connect more with each other, with nature, and go into hiding from this corona thing. And, you know, it caused me to try new things. My shoes were falling apart, my biking shoes. So what do? Well, the biking store is closed. I'm in quarantine. Maybe I should fix my own shoes. And they don't look pretty, okay? But this is one of many things that I've done differently in the last few months. And other things have been different in education. And I want to talk about some of those things. And I also want to say, I know how I don't want to make light of coronavirus because I'm fixing my shoes. This has been devastating for many, many people, obviously, and we are going to get through it. But I want to share some of the things about that today. I am incredibly honored to be speaking to educators in India. I thought I should try something today to connect with the audience. So get ready on your chat room here. Let's play a little game. What are we going to call this game? It is time to play Rate Myron's Pronunciation of an Indian Place Name. Okay? Okay, cut the music. I don't know if you can hear that. All right. So we are going to rate Myron's pronunciation of an Indian place name, and you are going to need to choose your scale. Okay? Now, some of you would be like, I want to report on percentage. Okay? Some of you might be 2-level, happy face, sad face, pass, fail, good or bad. That's up to you. Some of you might, no, I'm a letter grade person, or I'm a number scale, proficiency. Others of you may prefer the words. He is beginning, he is proficient. Okay, so I want you to get your fingers ready on your keyboard for the chat room. Good. Rajani is saying great. She's ready. He or she, sorry. All right, here we go. Are we ready? Rate Myron's pronunciation of this word or place. Takshashila. I got a 3, a 4, 85%, a 2, 4, 8, a 1. Ha! Beginning, 80%. Oh, lots of ratings. Lots of ratings. So, Takshashila, one person gives me a 1, and I have a good, I have a meeting, I have a 4. Do you think sometimes that this is what our students experience? That first of all, many different scales. Secondly, many different ratings for some of the same work. I thought I would try this. Anyway, what I found very interesting, it will come back to scales in a bit. I went looking at some of your history of education, and it is fascinating. This place, this university, Takshashila, I'm going to keep trying, home to students from all over the world, over 10,000 of them, 68 streams of knowledge, and considered by many to be the first university. Alexander the Great reportedly, some would say, stole scholars there, or at least borrowed them and took them back to Greece. I didn't know these things. It's incredibly intriguing. And now things are changing more recently. This is an article from July 30th, 2020, and it speaks of this new education policy that's come to India. And I found this incredibly fascinating, that this is not going to be just about the acquisition of knowledge, but it's going to be the realization of self, of liberation. And this article continues on. I found it interesting that you have so many scholars that I hadn't heard of, and that these people have played an incredible role in global education, our understanding of astronomy and navigation and so many things. And I didn't know this. So first off, this is one of the reasons I am so honored to share today, because education is nothing new to India. In fact, it goes back much, much further than Canada. And now you have this national education policy. And I find this very, very interesting as well. And I want to say I am no arm of the Indian government, but I have had a close read of much of your policy, and it looks very good to me for what that's worth. So if we scroll down a little bit to some of the fundamental principles of this policy, and I'm going to be pretty quick with this, but there are things that jump out at me. That this is going to be a policy that shows flexibility. It's going to look for the whole child. We're looking at a holistic approach to education. This jumps out at me. Conceptual over rote memorization, that we need to get away from this idea that people must memorize in order to learn. And there's been a shift globally towards creative thinking, life skills, communication, and so on. And this is reflected in the principles of your policy. I find it very interesting that they're looking at formative over summative assessment, and that we want to get away from coaching kids to the answer and telling them what they should think. And here is the right way to say it. And it goes on. Technology for all, looking at diversity and local awareness. And if you've turned the news on any time lately, I think it's high time we talked about equity and inclusion. So there are so many things in this education policy that make lots of sense. So how I want to anchor our conversation today is to talk about some things that I have tried, that we're trying in some of the schools I'm working with, and bring them back and tie them into some of these principles. So I welcome you along on that journey. I called this session today Shared Ownership, and some of it comes as a result of reading this. I read a book called Extreme Ownership: How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win. And I'm not going to say I'm a big supporter of militarism, but I do teach history, and I'm interested in these things. And one of the things I found very interesting in their book is they talk about decentralized command. And they said that when you are tackling something as a team, every member of the team must understand not just what to do, but why they are doing it. If you know of any firefighters, they speak of span of control. What is span of control? Span of control is a very interesting idea, and that is that you cannot effectively manage more than 3 to 7 people at a time. I wonder what this means for us in our classrooms. Well, when a fire is underway and you are in a complicated environment, the research would suggest that if you are in charge, you are going to have quite a bit of control over 3 people closest to you. And then as that circle gets wider, you will have a little bit of control over 7. But after that, your effectiveness as a leader will go down very quickly because you can only effectively manage 3 to 7 people at one time. So I looked at this paragraph and they said with SEAL teams, just as with any team, there are leaders who try to take on too much, and this results in chaos. Well, maybe we should change this. There are teachers who try to take on too much themselves, and when this occurs, maybe the classroom can quickly dissolve into chaos. But if not chaos, how about boredom, routine, exhaustion, burnout? So they have a fix. The fix is to empower frontline leaders. Let's change that. How about empowering all of our students through decentralized command to ensure they're running their teams? How about their learning to support the overall mission? This is what I think we need to do in assessment, and I think your national education policy is speaking to this. That students need to become more in control, and some people may not want to hear this. We need to be less in control of the minute to minute, moment to moment educational experience of our students. So there's a very simple equation to this also, and here's the good news. When it comes to decentralized command, the fact is, when we empower others, we actually achieve more freedom for ourselves to do the things we believe are most important. So here's where I want to tie things back globally. Why is education changing around the world, and does this mean our students are going to be more empowered? I think so. I want to introduce you to a teacher that I know. This is Scott. Scott teaches grade 12 biology. And Scott did a very interesting thing. I want you to have a look at the map there. Scott contacted every university within 1,500 kilometers of our high school, and he asked them a very simple question. He asked them this: so what kind of students do you want? I have some of my colleagues saying you must lecture. I have some of my colleagues saying you must take lots of notes, that students must memorize. I think differently. What should I do? And that's when the heads of universities began to write Scott back. And they wrote things like this: and his email box began to fill with lots of emails. Here's another one. Get into the habit of examining their own thinking. Apply what they've learned. These are some of the very, very same themes that you see in your policy. That we want to move to conceptual learning, that this involves creativity, this involves life skills. It's popping up all over the place. If you're not convinced of this, listen to what the former president of Harvard University said, that most of what you're going to memorize is going to be obsolete. So what you need to do is you need to learn how to learn, not what to learn. And a number of years ago, Laszlo Bock from Google, which we all use likely almost daily, said, "We are beginning to feel that many of the test scores are worthless and GPA worthless." Well, hang on, what do you mean worthless? Worthless. Because what we found is that your ability to perform at Google is the opposite of how you are performing when you were in school. What you need to do, many of our workers need to get out of school to do what they most effectively do. Why do you think that, Laszlo? Because I think academic environments are artificial. But we've been telling students, we are getting you ready for the real world. Laszlo Bock said, no, you're doing the opposite. What do you want, Laszlo? Well, we at Google would like this. Would you please send us people who like figuring out stuff where there's no obvious answer? That's what we want. So where are these themes? Here they come up again and again and again. So here's the deal. If this world we live in is moving to require deeper, higher order thinking, we're going to need to change our assessment methods. And the challenge here is that this is going to be harder than grading traditional content. One of the easiest things that any of us could do, and I will speak from my own experience. I have given many tests. Okay, there's still some here. Would we agree that the easiest thing to grade is tell me these 50 places in India and I will check them right or wrong? Memorize this and I will grade it. That's easy. What's going to be more difficult is if we shift the verbs that we are asking our students to activate their learning. That is going to change everything. And I'm going to show you what I mean. So in your education policy, they are saying that transformation of assessment is critical. And I couldn't agree more. That we must move the way we assess is going to drive our instruction, and it's going to drive what our students learn. And it needs to be transformed. So for the next part of our presentation, I want to touch on a couple of ideas. I think one thing we need to look at is our grading language, the terms we use. Remember, we discussed earlier a scale. I was curious to see all the different scales that people used. I don't think I ever saw 87% or 92% on my pronunciation of Takshashila, or a 52. People use different scales for the most part. So my question is, how might this impact national education policy? Okay, well, let's go here. I had a teacher recently in the United States share with me this. I can't use my multiple choice test during COVID because my students just Google the answer. I can't, what am I supposed to do? And another teacher in the session said, maybe this is a sign that we need to change what we're assessing. That if your students could just Google the answer, couldn't they have done that before COVID? No, I have them in my classroom sitting there. Yeah, but the problem is that this is the kinds of things we're asking our students to be assessed on, what they could Google. So again, these things keep coming up. Conceptual over rote memorization. Or are we going to move toward creativity, critical thinking, and innovation? So here's the thing. I think the scale is very important. But what's more important is this. I think many of us, and you're welcome to chime in on the chat room, do you agree or disagree with this statement? Many of us went through an education system where what we were asked to do started with many of these words. The words that are easy to Google. Define, memorize, repeat, list, duplicate. Is this what existed in your educational experience? I want to see. Yes, yes, agree. Geeta says totally. Okay, lots of agreement. Same with me. I'm going to say right now, if you bump into parents who've been through the education system, I want you to keep in mind that many of them dealt with these verbs. But there are verbs which are not easy to Google, not as easy, and they are these. This, to me, is one of the most fundamental shifts that is occurring globally in education, and it is simply a shift in verbs. It's a shift from easy to Google verbs to not so easy to Google verbs. And when I sat down with 350 parents in Recife, Brazil, I showed them this slide and said, this is the change that your sons and daughters are going to be experiencing. Yes, Rajani, a shift in Bloom's taxonomy, absolutely. So this is where our grading language comes in. Percentage is very easy for these. It's fine. Memorize these 50 things. I can assign a percentage. But it's descriptors that are going to be better for these. So this is one of the shifts in our assessment transformation that needs to occur, is a shift in our very language that we use. So let me give you a very quick example. I work with a school called the American Foundation School of Monterrey, and they tried something. They tried this. They wanted to get away from ranking their kids, okay, more to describing their learning, to not assign numbers, but rather to say, here's where I believe your learning is going. And what they did is they brought in a scale. Instead of percentages in this highly prestigious international school, they do this, 4 levels of words. And one of the things that they saw is that when students go for extending, it's to transfer their understanding. So here's an interesting story. Along came a girl and her eyes, okay? So let me tell you what happened there. A teacher is teaching an art class, and she says there's this girl in the class that wants to draw eyes. And she said eyes are very difficult to draw for the most part, and some artists have a very hard time. These are all sketches of eyes, by the way. Eyes are difficult. And one of her students says to her, I want to focus my artwork this year on drawing eyes. And her teacher's like, no, we need to do this and this and this, and I'm going to teach you. But then she thought, I wonder if this is what maybe extending means. This is what transfer might look like. So she gave the student an opportunity to go deeper into her learning and to direct some of that learning herself. And guess who also valued this? This high school girl is currently working for the Walt Disney Company of Mexico. They also agreed that allowing somebody to go deeper into something that is meaningful was very, very powerful. And this is where, again, the themes keep coming up. Your national education policy talks about support for gifted students or students with special talents, that if somebody has an opportunity to see enrichment, then do it. And this is what I saw in Mexico as well. Anu, I agree with you very much in that it can reflect the IB form of assessment. So that was grading language. Let me give you another example. What if we shifted to the very learning tools we're using? What kind of change could we see here? Well, right after our schools shifted to remote learning, I got an email. I want to share some of it with you. This is what it read. Okay, it came from a teacher I had worked with. So we had been sharing we had been sharing this, this scale with some high school teachers. Elementary were using it, middle school. And he said, I found this very useful. His name was Marcus. And I said, Marcus, you found it handy during remote learning. Why? Well, he said, Myron, this is the scale I have shifted to in my teaching of history, and it is very nice. Why? Well, he said, I like describing a learner as having initial understanding, and some of you think I am at the initial level with Takshashila. That's fine. Some people, it's partial understanding, complete, or sophisticated. Just listen for a second. A sophisticated understanding. That doesn't mean you learned everything. That doesn't mean my learning is over. It means you are showing a sophisticated approach. And what Marcus liked about this, he said it. He's avoiding A+ or 100%, and rather he is talking to students about why their learning appears to be sophisticated. Try this next time. I want all of you to listen to a learner who says, think of the most advanced learner in your classroom who says, I got 100%. They do this. They often lean back like, I am finished learning. I know it all. That is not sophisticated. Rather, Marcus sees this shift as a way for students to explore, to just go for it in their learning. And the language has helped. So what does extended or sophisticated look like? Well, as we continue through this COVID era, I am seeing teachers use questions very effectively so that every student's response can be different. And here is what the same thing the American teacher said is this. They can't just Google it. That's the thing. So some of you might be, well, how Myron? How does he do it then? How? Okay, let me show you. So it doesn't really matter which scale you use. And I don't really care if it's got 3 levels, 4 levels, 5 levels, 7 levels. Some IB scales have 8. I think it's much, much better than 100 levels. What Marcus does is this. For example, and you have this in your handouts that I sent to Neha and Vidushi, I believe got these handouts. So they're going to be distributed, okay? What Marcus does is he gets his students to start a secret police file on one of the Russian Revolution members. And they have a number of things they need to investigate with this. He shares with them a note-taking sheet that they could use for their planning. And he shares with them a 3-level scale showing what success criteria would look like. Students have a role in every one of these phases. What do I need to learn? How am I going to do the research? And how am I going to be assessed? So that is a very powerful thing. But what Marcus is doing is he's getting his students to pursue a question. This is very similar to all the middle school teachers out there. This is similar to a school I worked with in California. And this teacher, remember my question from Rick Stiggins, he says, where are we going? Where am I now? How do I close the gap? Where are we going? I help schools build these documents. Check this out. This teacher hands out a very clear unit plan for her students, starting with a question. So, how ethical is genetic manipulation? And some students are going to are going to have one answer and some students will have another. She ties this to the learning standards. They look at something called dog breeds as a phenomenon. And then she does this. This is the very same suggestion Rick Stiggins shared. What do I need to know? What do I need to reason? What skills am I going to need to show? And what's going to be the product of my learning? And if you notice, the verbs are all put in italics. What you need to know, what you need to compare, what you need to explain. These are the same types of documents I built in my classroom after I went to that education conference that I didn't want to go to, where I was looking at IKEA furniture. I came back and I looked at this. So here's my point. We have these kinds of documents, and I believe they tie into the very things that the national education policy is speaking to. How do we build in flexibility, holistic education, and these other points? I think there is a way of doing it, but it takes a systemic shift. I have been noticing in the chat, by the way, that there are many positive comments to this. I'm not suggesting everybody loves it, but the comments are positive. There is an offering we're going to talk about at the very end. And a lot of people are saying we need to look a little bit more at rubrics. So here I want to share a little bit about that, but I would have much more to share in a course offering that we're going to talk about later on. Okay, so stay tuned for that. Learning tools. Now I want to shift to instruction and assessment. So here's an idea. During this COVID time, if your students are going to be working remotely in any way, or when they get back, what if we tried a system of same question, but different responses? Okay, let me show you what I mean. What is our traditional model of delivery? Well, if it's anything like my classroom, it looks something like this. Okay, traditional model of delivery. There's me, the teacher. I have a classroom of students, and I come up with an assignment. We'll call it assignment number 1. Tell me if this sounds familiar. I make up this assignment and I give one assignment to every student. They all get the same assignment, okay? Now, what about the model of assessment? Well, I would, to do that, I would make an assignment key, the answers, and then I would ask everybody to bring their assignment in. And just let me know in the chat room if this sounds familiar. A bunch of students handed in on time. Some handed in a little bit late. 2 of them simply disappear. And I don't know if you have the same animals in India, but a cat or dog seems to eat at least one of them, okay? So, yeah, okay. Lots of people have the same experience. This is a shift that I am seeing during the COVID time, and it's this. What if we shifted our models? So what if the teacher came up with a question rather than a predetermined set of answers? And now the students could work in different configurations. Some students work in groups, that's fine. Some students work on their own or in pairs. You could work at your own house. You could be on a trip to Africa with your family and you could do the question there. The point is, like Marcus, or like the teacher with how ethical is genetic manipulation, is you all get a question. And what's different than our traditional models is this. The responses look different. Everybody is not identical. The question was the same, but the answers are different. And that's what's critical. So once again, people might be saying, okay, Myron, show me an example. I will. Let's just go to standards based in the United States. Here's a Common Core standard, and you could write this for any school. We would like our students to conduct a short research project to answer a question. Okay, sounds good. And that should include a self-generated question. Ah, I like it. Good. Okay. Then they combine that with a science standard. Let's talk about per capita consumption of a natural resource. Now, what could we do with students working at home that would be a common question for everybody? How about this? What's your personal level of daily water usage? Which would include a mathematical theme, the English component, and then a self-generated question. How many simple changes would I need to make to cut it by 50%? This is a question that is very difficult to Google and very difficult to copy from student to student. It's just a different way of looking at this as same question, different responses. And that's what I think is going to be a very powerful piece. It fits very much with many of the principles in the national education policy. And these are just some of the shifts that I'm seeing that would be effective in this area. So I intended to have this presentation go for about 45 minutes. And we're almost there. So we started a little bit late. Let me show you one more thing. People I noticed are mentioning rubrics. Rubrics need to be well designed. But here's the thing. Rubrics, if they are built correctly, and there are wonderful books out there, How to Create and Use Rubrics by Susan Brookhart, one of my absolute favorite books. If we build rubrics well, here's the thing. They are a very good grading tool for the teacher, but they're a wonderful learning tool for the student. They do two different things, okay? So let me give you an example. Here in British Columbia, we have a lumber industry. And this person that you see right there would grade lumber. Lumber is graded A, B, C, D. Now, look at this person. Maybe they've been grading lumber all their life. So do you say, do you need a rubric? No, I know what kind of wood this is. Okay, you may not need a rubric. But what about the young worker who just started there, who doesn't understand what A, B, C, D in wood means? So for the experienced teacher that says, I don't need a rubric, yeah, but maybe your students do because they are new to it. So one of the things I'm going to look at in the course that we're offering, and I'm just going to be very quick here, good rubrics would have clear criteria to really let the students know what they need to do. Good rubrics have a fixed measurement scale, and good rubrics have a detailed description of what student performance could look like at the various levels. These are three critical pieces to a rubric. And for the last thing I'm going to show today, I want to show you why a rubric fits so well with deeper thinking. Here it is. A teacher I work with named Russ Reed had this learning standard to tackle. Assess a variety of interpretations of geographic evidence after investigating different perspectives reliability of sources, and adequacy of evidence. Whew. That is quite the standard. Okay, so here's what he did. He did an assignment called Walkabout, and it was brilliant. First of all, Russ wanted his students, where's my phone? Right here. Russ wanted his students to be able to use these in an assessment, not say, give me your phone, not allowed, not allowed. He said, these are in their pocket every day. Why do we always take them away from them? It's just an idea. And it turns out your national education policy talks about a little bit about this too, that maybe we can get technology, smartphones and tablets involved in every element of the educational process. So what did he do? Well, he gave them this assignment. He said, we are going to take a walk outside of our school. And you have 9 themes. I want you to take a photo of something you see in the community that fits with one of these themes. And students said to him, well, what photo should I take? That is your choice. Well, where am I going to see this? Geography is everywhere. These themes should be in our very community. So have a look at what happened. When the students got back from the walk, Russ said it was silent as he heard them typing. And this is the kind of assignments he got back. A student took a theme, they took a photo, and then they supported why they chose that photo with this theme. And I want to be clear, Russ did not tell them what pictures to take. He gave them the theme, and the student needed to take the photo and then make the connection. So it's like a triangle. Quote or theme, picture, support. A triangle. And the results were amazing. A student would take a picture of a McDonald's cup and talk about the idea of a $6 burger and fountain pop sounds great when living on a budget, but the poor can't afford this. We pump fossil fuels into the air, and you're talking to someone who's working for minimum wage in this drive-through. Something needs to change. This is where deeper thinking abounds. I included these examples, everybody, in the handout so you can have a closer read of them. Some students chose just a symbol and said what we need to stop. But what Russ said, he says, Myron, these are amazing. I don't have an assessment tool that's working well for this because this isn't memorization. So what we did is we built this. We built a clear rubric that's going to have, Suchita, I agree with you. It's an excellent result. Here is the assignment. Very clear verbs for what the student is going to need to do. Look at the third one, support an argument or position with relevant information. And if there is no evidence, don't use a 0. You tell somebody you have not answered this part of the question. I can't give you a grade if there is nothing there. For our very lowest, most struggling learners, we are working on strength-based language. Do you understand, many people, why so many students and parents get sick and tired of school? Because if you always get negative language around your learning, you get discouraged, you get depressed, you don't want to do it. When I'm teaching my son to ride a bike, I don't run behind him telling him all the things he's doing wrong. I tell him the things he's doing right and what he needs to work on. And if there is specific information he needs, we can put those in the comments. So I'm sharing this with you also in the handouts. For you elementary teachers out there, I have also shared a grade 3 version of this, which was fantastic. We had our elementary students do their own version of Walkabout. I've shared it with you. If you need some help with that, by all means, you can email me. I'm hoping I'm sharing my email at the end. My website is shared, reach out. But this, we also made a rubric and a Walkabout assignment for the elementary students. Caroline, I agree with you over in the comment. Negative language around learning. I want to be clear. We can tell someone, listen, what you need to do is this, or you need to stop doing this. But I would challenge anybody to go find the nearest rubric right now and look at the lowest level and tell me if it isn't negative language. Vague, weak, wrong, disorganized. What if your educational experience revolved around those words all the time? I don't know if you would like school. Just an idea. So, decentralized command. I think we need to have a system that every team member understands not just what we're doing, but why we're doing it. And this is the idea I wanted to get across today. I spoke earlier about something we are working on, and I don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet. We came up with this idea a few days ago, but one of them is to run a series, which we go right to the beginning of what our purpose is, and we will carry through to what entire assessment plan would look like, from purpose. If you like those target documents, how do we make those and have people practice with them? How do we make a good rubric? And could I get some practice with that? We have an exciting opportunity that schools will hear more about in the coming days. So I want to thank, I hope I get the names right. I want to thank Nita. I want to thank Neha. I want to thank Vidushi. And one of them starts with a K. I'm going to forget. I'm going to feel very bad. Kavita, thank you. And Nita, before I close, I can't talk about feedback without asking for it. So if something didn't work for you today with this, or this was not a session that worked for you for some reason, I need to know that. I'm trying to get better. I hope that I have given some value today, and I want to thank you so much for joining. And it's been my honor. Thank you. And I'm willing to take questions and hang around as long as people would like.
Before we thank Myron, any questions for Myron? I think, Myron, you've left all of us with much food for thought. I think for me,